It is Dennis and the Doc. It is our Big East preview. I am joined by the always lively, always enthusiastic, ever
Always.
effervescent Mr. Dennis. How are you today, Mr. Dennis?
I'm all right. How are you? I'm excited.
He's excited, folks. Did you hear that? He is excited. I am not holding him against his will. I am Dr. Chim. We are doing well today, and you know what? We're gonna jump right in because we probably have quite a bit to get to. So we'll kind of do a team by team preview for the 24-25 Big East season. A lot of interesting storylines the off season, a lot to follow as we get into the upcoming season. We'll do little team previews, then we'll do our predictions for the standings this year. We'll talk about who we think might win awards. Then at the end, we'll do kind of like a little quick run through of what we think each team would need to be successful or what they would have to avoid for the season to not be a failure. So we're going to start, I think, from the bottom and kind of work our way up to the top. So a week ago, I pulled this using the Bart Torvik data, whereas now the Ken Palm is also available. So I'm just going to kind of work back to front with the lowest team on the Bart rankings, which unsurprisingly is DePaul. It's not the same DePaul team as last year, and the DePaul team of last year was not the same team as before, and that's been going on for about a decade now. But it's a completely new top 10 for DePaul, roughly. Their 10 best players, I think, in fact, all of their scholarship players are different from last year. They've got a couple of interesting guys. Layden Blocker from Arkansas, probably expected to run the show at the point this year. Only averaged 4 points a game last year, but an interesting prospect. They pulled in Connor Enright, sharpshooter out of Drake. CJ Gunn, another bench piece from a high major program in Indiana. David Skogman, a 6'10 senior out of Davidson, shot 46% from three last year for a big. Um, Mr. Dennis, what's your first thought when you take a look at the DePaul roster this year?
I don't think it's good. I mean, I think there's no way it's as I don't want to say no way because DePaul finds a way. There's no way it's as bad as last year.
Right.
They should at least like be competitive, like maybe accidentally win a home game or two. Um, but I don't think I do think there are people who are kind of getting carried away. I've seen people saying like, "Oh, is DePaul better than Villanova?" They're not.
No.
And it's not particularly close.
No.
I
So
don't
they
know. It's fine. It's a mid-major roster. It's fine in the DePaul sense.
Yeah, it's one of those things. They are returning guys who scored 99 points per game last year. And I say returning, they're all new players. They don't have any freshmen in their top 10, which is kind of unusual for DePaul. But the problem is only 18 of those 99 points aren't coming from up transfers.
Yeah, it's I mean, I don't know. I think like for the first time in a while the program has direction, but I don't think it's this year. Or like I mean, I guess like to be fair, like I think they could go 4-16 or like and that I guess is technically progress
Oh,
in the Big.
I think that would represent pretty significant progress for them. I mean, you're talking about a team that 0-20 has been on the table for them, each of the last two or three seasons now.
Yeah, with last year being there. I forgot they beat Louisville. That's fucking funny. Um, yeah, I mean, like they were what 3-17 the year before, but they did get a Big East tournament win.
Yep.
As in 2 years ago, they were 6-14 the year before that. Like, I don't know. I mean, like I think they're Ken Pom has them like 166. That feels about right.
Yeah, Torvik has them up at 119. I think they'll probably wind up somewhere in between there. Front court is very small. Skogman's 6'10, but he's really more of a stretch four. The only other big you kind of have is NJ Benson, who is an up transfer from Missouri State. A good rebounder, but not much else to write about. I think Holtman is probably doing the right thing with the players he selected here because I think he clearly went after efficiency. Most of them had pretty good efficiency numbers in limited minutes, and he went after 3-point shooting. Nine of their or eight of their 10 rotation guys shot 35% or better from three in whatever their limited activity is. So, like, it seems like a team they're going to bury a decent Big East team from three next year and kind of steal a win that way. Like, if I had to guess, like a team like Providence, they might, it wouldn't stun me if they hit 18 threes as a team and win a
Against
game
the
like
coach,
that.
18 is a lot of threes.
Oh, it is. Yeah, but I mean, this team's probably going to shoot 35 of them a game.
Maybe.
Like
I
if
think those,
I'm Holtman
those
and
numbers are a little high.
you're playing against more talented rock, like it's not going to be a thing where I expect them to get open looks or anything, but might be a chuck and see what happens kind of team.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think they shouldn't be the embarrassment they were last year.
Yeah.
And that's good for them, I guess.
Yeah, and I think we both agreed that Holtman was probably the best they could do. I think we mentioned this on a pod last year that we think he's going to be a good fit there. Um, you got to he has Big East experience and he's coached at a high level, but he hasn't found a tremendous amount of success. I mean, Butler took a pretty significant dip while he was there. Ohio State didn't quite get to where they thought they were going to be under him, so there are question marks there.
I mean, Butler didn't take a dip under him.
You don't think?
In his 3 years, they never finished outside the top 30. 6 seed round two, 9 seed round two, 4 seed Sweet 16.
I guess I remember the end of that worse than it was.
I think that's Jordan who like
Oh
even
shit! I
for
see.
a
I
couple
even
of
forgot he
years.
was there.
Yeah, pride of UWM.
Yeah,
And I mean,
now
like,
pride of the
his
Fox
Ohio
Sports.
State tenure didn't end great, but like he did, like they were a 2 seed one year, which yeah, I know they lost in the first round. I mean, he had a top 10 team. Like he had his Ken Palm ranks, like he had a 16 and 8 and an 11. Like his last two teams weren't great. Like he was also like last year he was victimized majorly by shooting luck. Like nothing changed from him to Diebler except they started making open threes, other teams started missing them. Like, and I'm sure we'll get into that more deeper, but like, I don't know. Like, did you have to fire him? Like, I don't know, maybe. Like last year was pretty like they weren't as bad in 23 at Ohio State as the record said. Like
No.
they weren't as bad when he was there as the record said. Like, I don't know, he got a little unlucky, but like probably it was time for a change. And I don't know. I mean, I think it's a good hire. Like he's a floor raiser. I don't see any way they like bottom out into like the 300s like they were with Stubblefield, which again, that's terrible. Like I'd be surprised if this team ever is like outside the top 200 under him. And like I think in the good years, depending on how long he's there, they get inside the top 100 and like maybe crack like top 80 once or twice.
Yeah, I mean the question you would ask is, do you see them making a tournament while he's there?
Um, no, because someone will go after him before that.
Yeah, that was kind of my thought as well. If he pulls a season where they go 8-12 in Big East play, he's probably gone.
Yeah. All right, that's up to Paul.
All right, talking to Paul, done. Georgetown is up next. They are 104 in Bart, 88 in Ken Palm. A little bit of an interesting roster construction. They really do not have a big man on the roster except for two freshmen. Malik Mack is the big addition coming from Harvard, where he scored 17 points a game. Jaden Epps is back. He figures to be in the race for the Big East leading scorer. Micah Peavy coming in from TCU, definitely kind of a glue guy, a 6'8", 4. Couple of
Mike,
guys they might
that's a
start at the.
random ass get.
That's what.
Like that's Micah Peavy ending up at Georgetown is really weird to me.
Yeah, it's strange because it just feels like he's in the exact same role but at a worse program.
Or he's just going there to get his shots up, which
I mean,
isn't
yeah,
it.
he took 87 threes last year, 31% on those. I mean, I figure that number's going to go up. He's going to get more than 87 looks.
Yeah, I
And at
mean,
the,
yeah, I don't know. Like it's like it's just a weird ad for me to see him go there.
yeah, it's probably he's a solid defensive player, but he's not a a program changer on defense. Like he's not going to make up for what you're probably losing with Mac and Epps at the guard spots.
Yeah, I would probably agree.
At the wing, they got Curtis Williams from Louisville, only averaged 5 points a game there last year on an 86 O rating. I don't know if he will start or Jordan Burks will start. Burks is a little more of a big three or a small four. 6'8" from Kentucky. Didn't get much action last year, but he was good in his limited action. He's definitely kind of a breakout candidate, I suppose, where if they can get him rolling, this might not be a horrible team. But what are your thoughts on the outlook for Georgetown this year?
I hate this team. Like they played no defense. Like what was the game? I think it was Xavier that they lost like 95-89 or something like that last year.
That
Like
sounds familiar. I mean,
the oh,
and
fine. Like
I
they
think they
played
played
no
a
de
couple good games.
92-91. Like
Oh,
they played no defense. They ranked 321st defensively. Like they had a top 100 offense. Like that's what's weird to me. I mean, like they lost Brumbaugh, who like he was a nothing on defense. Like I don't know, maybe like Jay Heath, maybe that helps, but like
Heath
I don't know.
on
Like
their defense definitely helps, but replacing him with Malik Mack, I don't think is taking a step up.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's a weird like it's too early to like be out on Cooley. But, like I don't know what you could possibly see in year one that doesn't make you uneasy. Like they're not recruiting great. Like
Well, no, and their
they
their
don't have a great home court or anything.
no, their
Uh
freshman recruiting hasn't been terrible. Like they got a couple of like top 75 guys in this class, but their transfer recruiting has been horrible.
yeah, except
They
for the
were in
five
on
minutes Eddie Lampkin that they had.
Yeah, they were in on some bigger names this year, and I think they tried to go big game hunting and it didn't work out. And by the time the chips had fallen, they were kind of shit out of luck.
Yeah, I don't like I mean they just have to play defense. Like they're gonna be there's enough good defensive teams in this league and like even the ones like I don't think Xavier's great defensively, but like then they'll just outscore them like they did last year. Like I struggle to see, and like I guess it's an engagement thing. Um, I don't know. I struggle to see upside because I just don't think they're gonna stop anyone.
No, I think the upside, like that's one of those things is you look at a team like this, you say what has to go right for them to be successful. You either need one of these nothings or one of these freshmen on the bench to turn into an all conference player, and still then you're looking at, well, you need to win a lot of 90 to 85 games, because I think this team will be better defensively than last year, but that's only because it would
It'd
be
be
hard
hard
to
to be
beat.
worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Would you take DePaul or Georgetown?
I think Georgetown, but it's close to a toss up.
I think I would take Georgetown as
Yeah.
well.
I like Burks's upside. I don't hate some of the freshmen like Thomas Sorber, who will probably start at the big for them, is supposed to be okay. And Epps is a good scorer. Like he's a talented scorer. So they've got some guys who can at least go get a bucket. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean that's enough of I don't know whatever. I mean they're likely 10 and 11 unless some team gets decimated by injuries or something happens unforeseen with either.
Well, okay, so I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, and it's because we'll talk about the next team here, which is Seton Hall, 92 in Bart, 91 in Ken Palm. They're projected the 34th best defense and the 150th best offense, but this team is completely unrecognizable from what they had last year. Last year's team is one of those where you didn't really think a whole lot of them, but they were still in position to be in position, as they say, at the end of the year. 5 seed going into the Big East tournament. Had they not gotten stomped by St. John's, they might have had a shot at getting in. But the only returning player that had anything significant happen last year was Dylan Ade Wusu, who I have been vocal on as being one of the worst players in the Big East every year for the last 4 years of his career. And somehow he's still,
35% from the floor.
yeah, somehow he's still hanging on to a starting spot somewhere in this conference. The big story with them is going to be the transfers that they've brought in. It's Garway Dual from Providence is probably going to play the point for them this year. He really couldn't find a hold anywhere in that team last year, and that was a place where he had opportunities early in the year to crack their rotation and couldn't. He was a big recruit. He's a 6'5" point guard who can play a little bit of defense, but shot 25% from three, wasn't good from the field, didn't do a whole lot of rebounding, didn't do a whole lot of assisting. You got Scotty Middleton coming in from Ohio State, who I like a little bit. He's definitely a sharpshooter. He's a catch and shoot guy. 44% on 63 attempts from deep last year, and that's really all he did coming off the bench at Ohio State. They're kind of, guess, hoping he turns into a wing threat. The big is a huge, huge question mark. They're bringing in a guy who played 19 minutes a game at Evansville, and he's probably going to be their starting big this year. I look at this roster and I'm really struggling to see upside here.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see upside necessarily. Like, I think Holloway is a good enough coach, and they're going to play enough defense to have a high enough floor. And I think what differentiates them in my mind from DePaul and Georgetown is two things. A, they actually do have a home court now. If they, start off 0-6 and are averaging 60 points a game, how quickly does that fade? Like, up for debate. Um, but I think the defensive difference like raises the floor, and like Holloway is very good at scheming. Like the way he like the St. Peter's Kentucky game, I know it's a couple of years ago, but like the fact that game was even close, and that took shooting variance obviously to be close. Like if they played 10
Right.
times, that's the only one they win. But like the fact that he found a way that is ever close is extremely impressive. Like I don't think their team last year was that talented. Like they obviously lose Richmond. Um, and I think they're gonna defend. Like three of the transfers they brought in were four-star recruits. Like you never know how in year two that kind of translates. Like Dual looked good at the beginning of the season. I know there are
Yeah.
Providence fans saying he was going to be a lottery pick, which not quite, at least not yet. Like I wouldn't be surprised to see him. Like I don't think his efficiency is ever going to be there, but like I wouldn't be shocked to see him be kind of like a defense first guy who gets like an inefficient 10-5, which you take. I don't know. I trust the coaching more. And like I just think the way that they're going to play defense gives them a high enough floor that I don't see them um, below 9.
Yeah, and I mean they have options, right? It's one of those things where they have a couple of guys where like, hey, if one of them becomes the player that they're supposed to be, it's not, that's where your upside is. They got Isaiah Coleman, a second year guy who was all freshman team in the Big East last year, only scored 5 points a game, but was decent in limited action. Chauncey, or I think I think it's Chauncey is how you pronounce it. Jenkins from Old Dominion was a 16 point a game guy there last year. He was a big usage scorer, though. He wasn't tremendously efficient. Prince Aligby from BC, 5 points a game there. Just a, he's apparently had good practices. He's looked good, but how much can you really count on that? And then they've got a freshman in Gus Yalden,
Johnson.
redshirted at Wisconsin last year. Yeah, I was going to ask you about that one.
Is weed legal in New Jersey?
Probably. It
All right,
certainly
well
smelled like it when
that's
I
a
was there.
plus for him. Yeah, I mean the book on him, like he's an undersized big, like who like compares his game to Jokic, which means like he's a slightly overweight white guy who can pass.
I have a note in
Um,
here. They call him Baby Jokic. So there you
yeah,
go.
baby Jokic in the sense that he's notably worse at everything. Um, but yeah, like I mean that's like the type of big he is. Um, had to like I think the plan was to redshirt him last year, kind of get the baby weight off and put on more muscle, which I think he did somewhat. But yeah, he was gonna redshirt, got busted for weed, I think twice, maybe an underage in there as well. Likes to party, which have fun finding a way to do that in
South
Newark, New
Orange.
Jersey. Um, which I mean, if like I could see Holloway being a good like if Holloway's gonna keep him focused, like kick his ass, like he does like he is one of the few guys who like has offensive upside. Like
Yeah.
now is he like I think he's the opposite of the rest of the roster in a lot of ways where like he can score, but I don't know if he's gonna play a ton of defense.
Yeah. I mean, it is, I think, a question of how much you trust Holloway because I see this and I to spoil something for my predictions, I genuinely considered putting this team at 11th because I look at the roster and I think it's horrible.
I think it's horrible. I mean, I just think that's a terrible take. I don't think Holloway has the ceiling. I wouldn't say he's the fourth best coach in the conference above Patino and Miller, like other dipshit podcasts might. Clip that. But like I think he has a floor, and like the way they're gonna defend gives them a floor, I think.
Yeah, and it's not ultimately something I ended up doing, but we're talking about so they lost essentially, I think their four plus best players, right? So Richmond goes to St. John's, Dre Davis is at Ole Miss, Alamir Dawes graduated, Bediako's gone. I don't remember if he graduated or if he's just gone. And those latter three, like it was a better team than you remember. Davis and Dawes could score a little bit. I think Dawes shot 40% from three last year, and he takes a lot of bad shots too. Davis bailed him out on offense a hell of a lot more than people remember. Like every time I say like Kadari Richmond's not as good as everyone says, it's because I think that Sporting cast was a little bit better than people remember. So it's one of those things too where I'm like, it's a team that yeah wasn't so bad last year, but is returning nothing from it except their worst starter, who I think is a complete zero at best and a significant negative at worst.
Sure. I think that's a little harsh on Adewusu, but yeah, fine.
I don't know. He's literally been my least favorite player in the Big East since he rocked up as a freshman at St. John's and was playing like 20 minutes off the bench.
Yeah, well, I have them not. I might have them eighth. I'll put them eighth.
Yeah, I ended up with them at 9, but it's I legitimately like that's if you ask me to make a bold prediction is they will finish between ninth and 11th. Like I see no scenario where they end up in eighth, but let's talk about why they might, and it's because Butler once again returns a roster, I think, with a lot of question marks. The metrics seem to have them between 75 and 85. I think that's pretty fair given what they've ended up with here. So Telfort and Brooks are back from last year, both averaged about 15 points a game. They're both kind of 3-4 type players, a little more wing than guard. This is a team that might be hurting for guard depth this year, just depending on what the sophomores do. Colby King is back in the Big East to play point guard, originally from St. John's. He went through Tulane last year, only averaged 10 a game there, but he was pretty efficient. Patrick McCaffrey is the big score transfer, if you can call it
Why is he
that.
not a? Oh, damn! It's not. Never mind. Not that one.
No, yeah, wrong McCaffrey. uh, coming over from Iowa, 6'9". He figures to start at the 4. I would guess. Uh, this team, oh, and Andre Screen, who played, I don't know, 15 minutes a game for them last year, is going to start at their big spot, I assume. The interest here maybe comes with their sophomores or their Landon Moore's a junior guard off the bench, didn't do a lot last year, but was decent from behind the arc. Finley Bizjack was named to the All Big East freshman team. They're hoping he can make any kind of a jump as a shooter. He's got decent rim runs, but can't really do anything from anywhere else. Bowden Kipke is their backup center, 2 points a game last year. So there's a whole lot of questions with this team. Do they have guard depth? Can they figure out multiple ways to score? And what's going to happen with their bigs? But Mr. Dennis, what do you think of this roster?
It's fine. Like I think it has a pretty narrow range of outcomes. I don't see them. I don't know. I don't think they have it in them for tournament contention. Unless they have injuries like they did in 23. I don't really see them bottoming out. Um, I don't know, 8, 9. Like I think they're right there to Seton Hall. Like them and Seton Hall to me are basically just kind of the same team of I don't really see a ceiling, but I think they're coached well enough, will play well enough defense, and but Butler's worse defensively but better offensively than Seton Hall. At least they should be to kind of limit the floor. Like I think I feel pretty confident these two are 8 and 9.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I would say Butler's certainly no higher than 7th, and even the more I look at Villanova now, I don't really think they're fair competition with them or Providence. Um, yeah, it's just not. not a lot to write home about. They're not super dynamic. Again, you're kind of hoping one of those sophomores turns into something, but even then, it's hard to see this team having a ceiling that includes the tournament. Questions at the big spot, questions at the point guard spot. So those aren't generally two things you want to be without. And I'll also make a note on this. Someone on this team needs to rebound because I'm looking at the numbers for these guys, and no one seems to like to very much. Telfort and Brooks are both big players, big wings. Neither of them hit 5 rebounds a game last year. Nobody off the bench had more than 1+ rebound last year. Their big Andre Screen was 5 rebounds in halftime. McCaffrey doesn't rebound at all. Jamie Kaiser, transfer from Maryland, didn't rebound much in limited minutes, and that's something I think they're going to need to do because I think this team is going to brick a lot of shots.
Yeah. I don't know. There's not really like a ton of size. Like obviously sizes and everything, but yeah, they'll need to hit the glass. I don't know. It's tough to project those. Like yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, not there. There's really I don't think a ton to talk about in Butler. It's probably one of the more uninteresting roster
They're
constructions, for lack of a better term.
to me, they're like a worse version of Creighton to me, where like and in the sense of like I think their floor and ceiling are like 25 spots.
Very well constructed.
Like
Yeah.
I think their ceiling is like 65 and their floor is like 90. Again, unless they have four injuries, their starting lineup like they did in 23.
Yeah. Well, let's get into Providence now. Bart and Ken both agree and have them at 60. But it's a team that has defied metrics, for lack of a better term, in the last few years. Very,
Hates them, so
yeah,
Ken
very
Palm
interesting.
burst.
Ken Palm has something against the people.
If Providence minus 10 spots.
It's built into the algorithm, I've been told. But
Okay.
it's an interesting roster construction. They get Bryce Hopkins back, who was out injured, I think, after the first 6 or 7 games of last season.
It
Um,
was longer than that.
was it?
It was the Seton Hall game on January 3rd.
Okay, so that's what, 13, 14 games in then?
13. Yeah,
Yeah.
double what
Okay.
you said.
Yeah. Oh no, I was wrong. But he was at 15. He was at a 15-9 pace last year, so they get your best player back. It was kind of one of those things where Devin Carter probably becomes Big East Player of the Year because he wasn't around and had to shoulder all that load by himself. Jaden Pierre, probably the only other returning starter from last year, assuming Corey Floyd gets relegated to the bench like he absolutely should. I don't think people realize Corey Floyd had an 88.0 rating last year. That's a special kind of
Very
terrible on
good.
a Power Five roster. Pierre was only 9 points a game, 3 rebounds, 3 assists. Shot okay from three. It's kind of been what Providence point guards have been for a little while now, but Carter kind of ran the show. They got some interesting transfers in. Bensley Joseph coming in from Miami was a couple of year starter or minutes player there. Was involved in their rotations these last couple of years. Um, Jabri Abdur-Rahim from Georgia, another 6'8" wing kind of player. 12 points a game down there. Wasn't terrible. Christ Essendoko from St. Joe's is probably the most interesting one. Came over after a pretty successful freshman year there in split minutes. 7-foot sophomore. They don't have him listed as the starter on Torvik, but I expect he will be. He's
Three-man
kind of
weave projects him to be.
Yeah, he's kind of an interesting I would be very surprised if he didn't start. And then Wesley Cardette Jr. from Chicago State, he scored 18 points a game there last year.
Former five-star.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see if they can kind of draw the talent out of him to play at a higher level.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I think he'll be fine. And then they have Osman, former Creighton target.
Yep. Yep.
Much to Creighton's chagrin.
Yeah, and that's one. He's a big time recruit. He will probably play, you know, 18 minutes a game, I would expect, as a young freshman, right? Because he reclassified.
Sounds right.
Yeah, he's 6'10". you don't really know what a guy like that's game is going to look like as it translates, but he was a dominant kind of player on the AAU circuit. Big time recruit. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he fits in. They've also got Anton Bonke as a JUCO player coming up to fill a big spot there. It's one of those things where you can never quite decipher if the guy is actually good or if it's just PCBC talking about guys like they're gods on earth when they're going to score 3 points a game in the Big East. But he might contribute. Rich Barron was good off the bench for them last year as a freshman. He shot 43% from deep. Got better as the year went on. He's kind of a bigger body for a guard, which kind of fits the English MO, I think.
Yeah. I don't know. And yeah, you can't forget that they have the world's greatest coach there as well.
Yeah, yeah, top tier coach in the Big East.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I'm so sick of him. Like Kim English has done nothing. Nothing. For his career, he's 2 games over conference record. Like, and again, if you want to say like, oh, like the Bryce Hopkins injury, and I know I talked about this a little bit with Kalkbrenner and Creighton last year, but like you also got extremely lucky that Devin Carter went from a very fine player to conference player of the year. Like those two things kind of offset each other. Like,
Well, isn't that just development? Isn't he just developing a talented player?
well, then develop Joshua Duro not to be a fucking stiff. Develop Garway Dual to play some offense. Like he left Kim English left George Mason, and George Mason immediately got better. Like
Yep.
George Mason had, like
He
they
left
finished
them
top
and
100
took
last year.
two of their starting players from them.
Yes, he took debatably their 2 best players.
Right.
And Tony Skinn came in his year one, put together a better year than English ever did at George Mason. Kim English never finished top 100. George Mason, he's never made a tournament. He finished below 500 in conference the first year. He went 11-7 the second year. He fell 34 spots from his preseason KenPom rank. Like I don't get it with him. Like he's fine. Like I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just as simple as he's a young, energetic coach, and people who fall for that kind of thing are going to fall for it. And he's got, of course, the rabid fan base that other podcasters in the Big East might not want to rile up by
Shut the
quote
fuck up,
unquote
Wesley.
disrespecting him.
Pussy.
But yeah, he doesn't scare. Like I'll admit the recruiting looks good for him so far, and I guess that's not entirely surprising, right? Because it's the same concept. A young, exciting coach with a call it a vision or call it just a hashtag if you want, but he's got an idea, I guess, of how he wants to play, and Oswin is a big recruit for them. So be interesting to see if they can keep any kind of momentum this year because in theory they should probably be a better team than they were last year, and that team was at least on the fringes of making the tournament.
Yeah, which speaking of the tournament real quick, another Provident fans that are gonna bitch about not making the tournament. Your best player went out. One of 2 things has to be true. Either your best player getting hurt didn't actually matter that much, and you fully acknowledge that Devin Carter stepping up was big, or in a do or die game that very well might have like tipped your tournament scales, you got Marquette on a neutral court missing their best player in a game that did not matter to Marquette at all and should have meant everything to you, and you got ran off the court. So one
Yeah,
of those 2 things has to be true.
yeah, and we'll forget what happened in the game before that, but that's not important.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't give a shit. Whatever. Bad coach. Um, I don't know. I think what Hopkins is this year like is interesting. Like, is he supposed to play like night one?
He's so I haven't heard anything official on that. I read one thing where they said he might be ready, and another where they said he might play, but he'll be banged up for the first couple of weeks. I have no idea.
I'd say like again, as an ACL survivor myself, who's by no means am I trying to call myself like an elite athlete. Like going through that rehab, like I can't imagine he's going to be the same player this year, or at the very least at the start of this year.
Well, a lot of guys who have, even injuries less significant than the ACL are never quite the same again. And we're talking about a big body who relied a lot on his kind of quick action athleticism, like not a great shooter. He's not your like prototypical like the fundamental player, like the wing, the traditional college wing from these days. He's very much a physical, a slasher, a rebounder kind of player. So if he's not as explosive as he was, he's not going to be the same player he was.
No, yeah, I don't know. I don't think this is a tournament team. Um, I don't know. I guess we'll see.
Yeah. It's an interesting, and I think the important thing is going to be figuring out a rotation there because you have, 9 or 10 guys that should be in contention for minutes.
Yeah.
So it's going to be finding your best, 7 or 8 and rolling with it.
Yeah. One other interesting Hopkins note, 2023, 28 of 77 for three for 36%. 2024, 10 of 53, 19%.
19%. Yeah, I had that
Which,
written down too.
which one of those two are like I'm guessing you're probably neither. And
Yeah,
like,
you're
maybe
somewhere in
like
between.
I think there's a chance off the ACL injury. Like I think he honestly could come back a better shooter just because like that's one of the few things you can do, is just
Right.
stationary form shooting. Like it wouldn't shock me, but what what type of a shooter is he? Not to mention 76% from the line in 23, 65% in 24. Like maybe Kim English should have developed that better. Um, which one are you, I guess? Like I think that's interesting to see. And like he kind of took a step back in everywhere last year, like before the injury.
Yeah, he had not been the same player. And this is something we could get to too when we talk like tournament hopes for these teams. They have done themselves no favors with their schedule.
No.
It's probably one of it. I assume is going to be the worst of the Big East in terms of teams who are actually trying to make the postseason with it because it's soft and it's one of those things where you can go 12-1 on a schedule or 11-1 on a schedule like that and maybe look okay, come out of it okay. You drop one of those bye games, this is going to be a team that's going to have a real tough time making the tournament.
Yeah, their buy games in general are like bad buy games. Like they don't like their top five games are all against teams outside the preseason top 300.
Yep.
Are they in an MTE? I see they play Oklahoma on Wednesday, November 27th at a
I
neutral.
think they are. It's one of those kind of smaller ones, if I remember
Oh, it's like the
correctly.
four team.
I think so. I'm not
Okay,
positive.
yeah, whatever. Okay,
It's not a strong one. I know that much.
sure. Weird too. Like they go to Rhode Island, which like I don't know. I think Archie Miller sucks. Like you, that's like a
Yeah.
sneaky like they're gonna get up for a Power Six team coming to their place. Like I don't love that. Like
Yeah.
again, I think Rhode Island sucks, and you're probably fine. I just am weary of those games in general. But yeah, I don't know. It'll be seeing them beat like Hampton by 8 or something, then wondering why they fall 10 spots in Ken Palm as if we don't do this same fucking exercise every year. It's gonna be really entertaining.
It's a team too where if Hopkins is struggling to score when he gets back, you could look at it and say this is a team that easily could put up 62 on accident on a night where they need to score 80 and get themselves into trouble.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean that's a good point. There's like again for I guess for those of you who don't know like kind of how Ken Palm factors in, so I don't know, clip this and tag Providence. Like margin of victory, margin of defeat matters. And like I think what you're saying like does, kind of kind of hold true. Like if there's a night where like Hopkins is off, like I don't know, take it to Creighton and like Creighton 25 balls them, like that matters. Or like Marquette at home where and like I mean I think Providence has shown the propensity for that a couple times where like they just like haven't showed up. Like last year they like 20 point home loss to Xavier. Like that game alone dropped them 13 spots. Like those matter. Like just no showing against Marquette like they did in New York last year. Like that matters. 11-point loss to Nova at home. Like that matters. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. So anything else on Providence?
I don't think so.
Okay. So moving on to Villanova, who the algorithms can't seem to agree on. Ken Palm at 20, Torvik at 43. Mr. Dennis, which way are you leaning on the Villanova Wildcats?
43. There's
Yeah,
no way this team is well coached enough to be top 20.
does the roster is the all right, I'll separate the question then because I think we definitively agree on that. But is the roster good enough to be a top 25 team?
I mean, good enough with who? Like with Dan Hurley, Kelvin Sampson, Dan Hurley and his assistants, sorry, Kelvin Sampson coaching them, or like just your average coach. Like it's a fine roster, but it's not a. There's no way it's as good as last year's.
No. No, I would lean toward agreeing with that.
I don't. I don't think it's. I don't think it's super close. Um,
No.
like what are they running out at this year? It's
It's got to be Brickus, Jameer Brickus from LaSalle, undersized point. Wooga Poplar from Miami, transfer shooter at the two. The three is kind of up for grabs. Could be Longino, I assume. I
I
have
think
no
probably.
idea if they're going to play like Nana and Joku at the four, or if Longino's going to play the four and Perkins at the three, Dixon at the five, I assume, or they'll try to go big this year. I really don't know.
From what I'm seeing, it looks like they're projecting Enoch Bokia.
Okay, Fresno State at the five.
Yeah, to start at the five, Longino at the three, Dixon at the four.
I feel like every year somebody projects like, oh, Dixon will play the four this year. He'll go back to and it never happens.
Yeah, that's probably fair. Um, yeah, I don't know. I kind of forgot Max Shulga was not on this team. Like,
Yeah, yep.
I kind of just
There's
thought he was. I don't
there's
really know
kind
what
of a
happened.
there's kind of a 6'6" wing who can shoot sized hole on this team, and he still plays for VCU.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very clear, and I guess the popular ad nullified some of this, but like I think it's a little bit of what you saw at Louisville that the donors and fans are starting a little bit to make their thoughts on Neptune heard. Um, and
Well,
I don't think there's the money and the financial backing behind this team as the year before.
yeah, I think
Uh,
it's fair to speculate, especially when you lose a transfer that late into the process after he kind of gives his commitment, that it raises some NIL questions.
yeah.
Poplar is
So
not a
I don't know.
is
I
not
mean,
a nothing ad. Brickus is a pretty decent ad too, but he's kind of him and Perkins, like two of their four transfers are Philadelphia guys. Like we're already playing in the Big Five.
mhm. I beat him last year, right? I think Penn beat him. Did Penn beat them
LaSalle
as
did
well?
for sure. Yeah,
Somebody else did. They lost twice.
I thought they lost three of the four. No, two of the four, three of the four.
Or yeah, like they lost at least. Yeah, they did lose to Penn, St. Joseph's, Drexel. Yeah, because they got
Yeah.
fifth in the Big Five.
Oh, it was Drexel, not LaSalle. Okay, that's right.
They
Yeah,
play us. They didn't play us. No, we'll just pretend LaSalle beat them. Who cares?
yeah, might as well have. I mean, this team for me is just how far can Dixon drag them kicking and screaming? Because I mean, he's not the same player against everyone else that he is against Creighton, but he's still a very damn good player.
Yeah, he's first team all conference, I think, with a bullet.
Yeah, Sharpie, as they say. I like Poplar a little bit. I think this team needs him to be a kick out shoot option. Um, Tyler Perkins from Penn is a little undersized for where they're probably going to have to play him, but he's not a bad ad by any means. 14 points a game in the Ivy. Now you saw it last year, like with the St. John's guys who come from the Ivy, and this is true for Malik Mack too. It took them a little while to get up to speed and kind of be the same player they were the year before, but I think for the most part, the Ivy guys that came up last year got there eventually.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Like, I think this team, yeah, it could take a moment to gel. But I think Neptune just holds them back. Like, they're like come from 33rd ranked offense, 14th ranked defense. There's no world. This is the 33rd best offensive team.
No, absolutely
Um,
not.
and like, there's no reason to think like they're not gonna drop another two games. Like looking at their non-con, like St. Joe's away, like neutral Virginia, neutral Maryland. I'd assume Maryland's probably part of an MTE, maybe. Um, what's the other one? Home versus Cincinnati. Like that's very
Ooh,
easily a
yeah.
non-con that I can see them coming out like 6-4. and like then there's a lot of work to be done in Big East play to not be exactly where they were last year. Like for as much as myself, like shit on that team, like they were 18 and 15. Um, they were 18 and 15 in the regular season, but like they ended the regular season like ranked 35th team in Ken Pom. Like that's an at-large ranking. They just like didn't win enough games.
Well, I think last year everyone universally agreed this is a top 20 team talent-wise with a terrible coach. This year, that's why I kind of wanted to do that exercise at the beginning. Like I think we agree this is not a top 20 talent team, and they still have the coach that caused all the problems last year.
Yeah, I mean, I think last year's team might have been top 10. Like, if that's a Jay Wright, like, I would have loved to have seen Jay Wright with that team go at
Yeah.
UConn and watch a 7 game series of those two teams. Like, last year's team had talent. Like, Justin Moore was really damn good. He didn't, start super fast. Like, I think the numbers kind of lag behind a little bit because of that, like, coming off the Achilles in year two. But, like, I think there were a lot of pieces to that team that like it wouldn't have been like a vintage Nova team, but like it would have been like there's no way that's not a tournament team under Jay, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree completely.
Yeah.
And
Home uniform.
this year you just kind of look at it and I feel like they've downgraded at every position except wherever Dixon plays. Like
I mean, sorry, go ahead.
you talk about Longino, like I feel like we're 3 years late on his breakout year now. He's a senior. I feel like we're still treating him like, he's got talent. Is he a freshman? Or is he a sophomore yet? Like, when's he gonna break out? Hasn't happened yet. The bench is, mostly freshmen, it looks like. You can't rely on that anymore, and they're not recruiting at the same quality they did in the right era. So again, kind of hard to see upside.
Yeah, I was just gonna say like, and we'll talk to the second piece. Like, it's a little bit the approach that I had with Seton Hall, but like, you're gonna be wrong making preseason predictions. Obviously, no one's gonna be perfect, but like at this point, like there are ways I'm willing to be beat. Like if Neptune pulls this team together and they're a top 15 team or top 20 or whatever, like I can see that happening. Like that wouldn't
It's
be
not
like the
impossible.
craziest thing in the world to me, but like that's not the way I'm gonna get beat. Like I can see a world where UConn lost a ton of talent, like they fall back to earth. They're a good team. They're, you know, the 12th best team in the country and they're a 3 seed. Like
Mhm.
I'm not gonna be wrong that way again. Like I'm willing to get beat that way. I'm not willing to get beat the other team. Like I'm willing to let Neptune surpass my expectations and get beat that way. I'm not gonna get beat the other way with him.
No, and especially not with a roster. Again, I again just struggle looking at this roster to say that this is a complete Big East team and that this is a team that's going to be ready to compete come December.
Yeah. And with a different coach, I think it could be.
Yeah, it might be, but I still think the ceiling is pretty limited here. This isn't a team that I think in any way, shape, or form has elite upside. Um, Unless you're talking about a freshman who comes in and is all Big East right away. But again, that's just not the case anymore. Like if you're waiting on your Steph Castle to come in and play at that kind of level right away, that is not a reasonable expectation to have.
No, I mean, and I might be higher than him. Like, I like Wooga Poplar a lot.
I do
Like
too.
him and Dixon could be like one of the best 1-2s in the conference, I think. But like,
Poplar's not
so
really a one though, is the problem. Like
I
he's
think
not
Dixon
he's
can.
no, I mean to say Poplar's not like a ball dominant guard where they can kind of play off each other and pick and screen
Okay.
off each other. Like Poplar is very much a guy who I think needs somebody to get him going. And
Yeah, his
Dixon isn't, is has a lot of strengths, but passing isn't one of them.
no. What's what's the name of the other Miami guard? Wong. Okay, never mind. Tangent.
Yeah, I like Dixon for my money could be a first team All American this year. Like I really believe that, and I still think this team struggles to see a tournament bid, let alone any significant upside.
Yeah. I don't know. But and again, like that said though, like the talent gives them a floor. They'll defend well enough for there to be a decent floor. I don't see like the hate got too far at some points of like, oh, this team could finish ninth. DePaul could finish better than this team. That's not
I'm not
happening.
there. No, I if I had to guess, this team will finish like Ken Palm like 44 to 48th. You know, another like 17 and 14, 18 and 15 kind of team and be a 5 seed in the NIT or something like that.
Sure. Yeah, that seems reasonable. Neptune, so then Neptune done after this year.
Yeah, I don't really see a way where that doesn't happen unless they. I mean, I don't even know if making the tournament saves them at this point if they're going to Dayton or something like that.
No, I think you'd like have to like I think you have to be home jerseys and win a game.
Yeah, yeah, I'd probably buy that. All right, moving on to Xavier. 37 Bart, 30 and Ken Palm. Very interesting roster they've got here. Um, just lost, what was his name? Larissa, whatever, Triore, who I guess was projecting to be their starting center this year. He's down for the season, which might leave them a little thin at bigs because they've got two guys who figure to return from injury this year. Zach Freemantle should be good to go in his 15th year of college basketball. And then Jerome Hunter coming back for his senior year after he missed, I think, all of last season. I don't remember. I don't want to speculate if it's wrong, but I thought it was like a heart issue or something like that.
I believe he missed all of last season. I believe it was a heart issue to start. That got cleared up, and then I think he blew his Achilles. Like I don't think he's going to be back to start the year.
Yeah, so that leaves them pretty thin at the big. John Hewley, the fourth, coming in from Oklahoma. Uh,
Previously hit, if I remember.
I think that's right. Yeah. 8 points a game there last year, so not necessarily a standout. But they do have a very interesting, potentially impressive guard rotation. Davion McKnight coming back from last year where he averaged 12 points a game on 38% from deep. Not a huge shooter from deep. Dante Maddox coming in from Toledo. He was 40% from deep on 180 attempts, 16 points a game, and the MAC is not anything to sneeze at. Ryan Conwell coming in from a very good system at Indiana State. He might be a little bit of an undersized three for them. True position is probably a two. 16 points and 6 boards there last year while shooting 40% on 260 attempts from three. So that's, I think, where the intrigue really lies with this team.
Yeah, I love this team. Um, I think right now I have one future bet, and it's Xavier title at
Hmm.
like 75 to 1. Um, I love this team. I think they're going to be awesome. Offensively, I think they will play enough defense, but unlike, Georgetown that we talked about previously, they do have the offense to just outscore them. Like them and Georgetown end up in another 92-91 game. Like I think it's going to be Xavier on top. I like this team a lot. I think Sean Miller is a great coach. Like again, certain other podcasts put their tier list out. Like he is in my tier one, tier two, up for debate again on how much Hurley actually does there. Um, I think Hughley, and I'll let me look this up quick. I want to say he put up better numbers at Pitt, and it was just kind of like a weird fit at Oklahoma, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, he didn't.
Um,
He did not have the best season there. Oklahoma's kind of had a weird system under Moser for a couple of years now, and he was good around the rim. I think he finished at a 71% clip, but they didn't feed him a whole lot. So there's a player in there, and it'll just be a question of how they manage minutes down low. Because if Hunter isn't ready to go, which I can't imagine he will be, him and Freemantle are basically your only two bigs that have any returning minutes.
Hughley was not as good as I thought, by the way, at Pitt, I will say. Would you like to play another fun? Who does this player compare to? Ken Palm, 2024, John Hughley. His number one similar player. Who was it? I promise you've heard of him.
Fred King.
John Hughley, 2023. So
Oh,
just it just kind of is what he is. I don't think I've ever seen that before. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Fine player. I like the roster a lot. It is I trust the coach. I believe in the coach. Um, this is my this is my number two team in the conference.
interesting. Okay. Yeah, I like the bench too a little bit. Dalen Swain looked good as a freshman last year. He's a guy who can play a little bit of defense. Can't really shoot it from three. He's not going to be a huge offensive weapon, but big physical, can play a couple of positions, can rebound a little bit.
Marcus Foster from Furman might end up cracking their starting rotation. I thought I heard a clip from Miller where he was high on him. 17 points a game at Furman last year. Not much of an outside shooter, a little bit more of a slasher, but rebounded fantastically for a guard last year, which I think will be very important for this team. Trey Green also looked good in limited minutes for Xavier at times last year, 6 points a game as a freshman. Showed some profile to be an outside shooter and shot 95%, I'm sorry, from the free throw line. So they've got tons of options at guard. It's just going to be a question of how I think the rotation gets figured out and then how they manage minutes at the big.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, they're gonna score. Last year issues were defense and rebounding. Issues are probably gonna be defense and rebounding again. Um, but like I said, I trust Miller enough as a coach that I'm willing to overlook some of it, and I think they're gonna be very good. And I'm willing to give him an absolute mulligan for last year.
Yeah, and I think that's more than fair. So their players this year, their top 10 rotation players this year, and it does include Jerome Hunter, are returning 110 points per game from their last season. Now, a lot of that is up transfers. I think only 54 of that comes from non-up transfers, but these are guys on this team that know how to score. You've got a coach who's going to build a system that's going to allow them to take high efficiency looks. Yeah, like you said, the defense and rebounding are going to be the question marks. Fremantle rebounds a lot better than I think most people will give him credit for because he kind of looks like and plays offensively like a bit of a softer big, but he's a pretty complete player if he's at full health. Hughley will be the question mark if he can contribute, depending on how they work out 4 or 5 minutes. But my note on them, I said if they figure out a rotation early in the year, we could be looking at a top 10 to 15 team.
Yeah. And it is there is the question of like up transfer guards, but I think with what Miller's done in like his previous 2 years at Xavier, um, he's probably pretty high at the top of the list of guys that you are going to trust to figure it out and figure out that he got the right guys in there. So yeah, like I said, I like this team a lot. Yeah, I mean, even with the injuries last year, before that Georgetown game that we kind of talked about where they beat them by one at home, like they were ranked 26th in the country in Ken Pom. Like that's
Yeah.
for a team that lost two starters a month from the season. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I like this team a lot.
Yeah,
Um,
and it's
they're
and they didn't have maybe the offseason they wanted entirely like Des Claude went to USC. I think that would have been an interesting fit to stay with this offense because they're kind of missing that like 6'6", 6'7" wing in their rotation. But I more than trust Miller. I'm not sure how high I am on this team in relation to I think they're very much in a pack of teams here in the Big East that we're going to kind of talk about, but this is a team I look at and I see upside.
Yeah, I think the Big East to me is one of the most like clearly defined tier lists of
Hmm.
like I think UConn has to be one that I think like Creighton, Marquette, St. John, Xavier two.
Yep.
You have DePaul and Georgetown in four, and everyone else in three.
Yeah, I don't think that's unfair to say at all. I think that the second tier is clearly defined for me, and the interplay there. If one team stands out from those ranks, it will be interesting to see how they would be considered nationally because I think that's going to be a meat grinder. Those games amongst those teams in the tier two. So if somebody is able to go 6-2, 7-1 against those other teams, you know, what are you
Yeah,
looking at there as a potential Final Four team?
sure. Yeah.
All right, so that brings us to Marquette. Metrics seem to agree on them: 25 in Torvik, 22 in Ken Pom, projecting a top 20 at worst defense, probably more looking like top 15 if everybody can get healthy. Cam Jones, of course, is the big name that returns in the starting lineup. He was 17 points a game last year on 41% from three. Um, Returning, most of their rotation pieces just without their big 1-2. Kolek is gone. Iguodaro is gone. David Joplin still around. Stevie Mitchell projects to he's not necessarily a true point guard, but he'll probably play there for a while.
It's who they're
Uh,
gonna put there, which I don't really like that.
No, I don't either. Sean Jones is a guy who could play there, but he's got an ACL issue. He might not be healthy for a month or two, from what I've heard.
I'll say toward in like late January, if I
Yeah.
remember
Uh,
correctly.
Chase Ross will probably start until then. Decent outside shooter. And then they've got some young guys coming off the bench who they feel pretty okay about having in the rotation. They'll probably play 9 or 10 deep for sure, if not more, to start the year.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't like this team a lot. Like they're five for me, and I even debated putting them on their own tier of like I don't think they slip. I don't think they slip below five, but I don't think they have either the upside or the consistency of 1 through 4, and 2 through 4, I guess, in this specific use case. I don't know. I mean, losing Kolik's big, but they looked okay without him. But losing Iguodaro is big as well. Although again, they did compete in Omaha without both those guys, so
Yep.
maybe they're overstated. I think Ben Gold sucks. Like I
Yeah,
know
I'm with you.
some people like him. There are people think he's going to take a lead. Like I think he sucks. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I think Stevie Mitchell's fine in the role he played. I don't know how well he translates up. I mean, I think this team just kind of like lives and dies with Cam Jones. Like if Cam Jones can take kind of that next step, and I don't even really want to say next step, given that he averaged, 17 on 50% shooting and 40% for deep, like that needs to be like the worst possible outcome for Cam Jones this year, I think, for this team to find the success that they had uh the last 2 years. Um yeah, I don't know. I don't love this team. Um Joplin is Jekyll and Hyde. Like he'll win him a game or two, he'll lose him a game or two. Um, I don't know. And like I guess the almost the wild card with this program, as weird as is, like they're not a wild card. Like I think they're one of like 3 teams that didn't take a transfer.
Yep.
Um, so the continuity, like they know what they have. They I guess like what they have, or they just don't dislike it enough to break from their mold. Um, but yeah, I don't know. It's going to be interesting. Like I wouldn't be surprised to see one of Lowry or Norman kind of take a step up and become a like 8, 9 point a game solid rotation piece. But I think like you need Cam Jones to be like unanimous first team all conference player of the year discussions.
Yeah, it's just one of those things because I have Marquette fifth too, and it's the same kind of question of if they are better than that, what does it have to look like? It has to look like Jones taking a step from already being one of the best players in the country. Mitchell fitting into a role that he's not great in. Or I shouldn't say not great, very untested in, right? Like he has his role, he's good at it. I don't know what he looks like as a point guard. We'll find out. Joplin, he's a senior this year. Last year was supposed to be the year where he took a jump and started being that kind of dynamic wing, like more of the Omax kind of role. And he didn't hit threes at a high enough level despite the volume. Like 35% isn't bad on 203 attempts. That's also not bad. But for the kind of looks he should get, he should be hitting them at a better percentage because he got a lot of open looks last year. And
One
then
is a
Ben,
little bit. I was
yeah,
gonna
go
say it's
ahead.
a little bit like Ashworth in the sense of like he'd go 5 for 7 one game, you'd think he's starting to figure it out, then he follows it up like 1 for 8.
Yeah, yeah. And 203 attempts is not a small sample size, right? So if you're talking about he's a probably 22-year-old senior at this point, 200 attempts last year and he shot 35%, that's probably who he is because he was getting open looks too. It's not like he was taking difficult threes. Ben Gold, yeah, I'm not a fan. I really don't think he's a kind of player that's going to be successful for what Shaka is going to need him to do. I don't think he'll be successful against some of the types of guys he's going to see in the Big East. Now, he wasn't horrible last year, and he does have the ability to pull guys out of the paint too. He shot, what was it, 36% from three on 100 attempts.
Correct.
The jump you're looking for him to take is kind of similar to the one that Martin Krompel took in that 18-19 season, but that was not a good Creighton team, So it's one of those things where you're counting on a guy to be a profile that didn't necessarily. He scored 5 points a game last year. We're talking about a big jump to where he is a quality starter in the Big East, and they don't have a lot of big depth behind him. They have, I think it's exclusively sophomores and freshmen on the bench, and yeah, maybe one of Norman, Owens, however many guys they got on the bench, you would need one of them to turn into a pretty reliable 12-point a game guy, I think, to finish any better than fourth or fifth. I'll be generous, I guess.
Yeah. I yeah, I'd say that's probably fair. I don't know. I mean, again, it's a tournament. I'd be very surprised if this isn't a tournament team.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
I just think it's probably closer to like the 22 team in like the 7 to 10 range. Maybe 6 to 10. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I just don't think this team is on the level or will have the consistency of the others in the league.
No, and I think it is also a team that I think can steal games because they're gonna like it's a Shaka team. They're gonna play hard. They're athletic. They'll create turnovers. So they might just blitz a really good team on one night and blow their metrics up to a point where they do maybe crack that like 4 to 6 seed range. I guess that definitely wouldn't stun me. Um, but yeah, I don't think this team has anywhere near the ceiling that last year's team does. And I think projecting them as second in the Big East would require some leaps that I don't think are necessarily there.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that's most of it.
Okay, so St. John's coming up next. 16th in Bart, 19th in Ken Palm, projecting a top 10 defense or roughly in that area. Yeah, it's a different roster look than they had last year, and I think that's a good thing. There's definitely some weak areas. You look at shooting as a big question mark on this team. Kadari Richmond's the one that most people are going to talk about. I really like Davon Smith coming in from Utah. 13 points, 6 boards, 7 assists for them last year. Very selective shooter. He's a game manager kind of point guard. I really like the way he fits. I mean, the difference in where he was to where he is now is Richmond's going to demand a lot of the ball, I'm assuming. We'll see how Patino manages that. They got two other somewhat interesting transfers coming in. Aaron Scott from North Texas, decent outside shooter on limited attempts. He's a good defender. Surprise, surprise. Can board a little bit. And then Vince Iwuchukwu, 7-1 big from USC. It's not clear if he's going to start or if Zuby Ejiofor will start. He played all right in limited minutes that last year, but Patino was quoted recently said he's made a jump and the talent's definitely there. Mr. Dennis, what's the biggest thing you're looking at when you look at this St. John's roster construction?
I think it's just like the roster fits with what Patino wants to do a lot more. It's like Smith is 6 foot, but then it's 6'6", 6'7", 6'7", 7'1". Like
Yep.
it's the long wings, the switchability. Like I think I'm just gonna call him Vince. Like I think he's going to have a very nice year. Like in I know it's still limited minutes. Like as a freshman at USC, he went from a 99 or 98.6 O rating and 14.5% of minutes to a 109 O rating and 36% of minutes. Like it wouldn't shock me to see um, those numbers scale as even as the minutes increase. And I think because I if correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he also had like a heart issue. Um,
I don't know anything about
hopefully I don't get sued. I
that.
kind of think he also had a heart issue in 23. Could be wrong. But like I think that like that's a Patino big where like, park him under the rim. You're not going to drive on him. They're going to be able to pressure. They're going to be able to move laterally, unlike his team last year. Has he
Yeah, Chris Ledlam is gone.
yeah, no Chris Ledlum, which yeah, that's great. Wonder what do you think how different is the year last year if Tennessee gets Chris Ledlum instead of Connect? Which
Oh,
I believe he was their plan. I believe Connect was the backup after
that
Ledlum.
sounds familiar
They
to
might have
me.
been independent of each other. I'm not sure, but whatever.
Yeah.
I'll choose to believe that. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think I like this team a lot. This is number 3 for me. Um, and the Big East. Like I think they're going to defend. I think Patino's a great coach. Um, Probably got a little too excited last year about a flawed roster that didn't fit exactly what he wanted to do. Um, I'm all the way in again. I think this is a top 20 team, a pretty surefire tournament team, and I think they're just hounds defensively.
Yeah, they're going to defend the shit out of everybody. RJ Luis, it sounds like he's banged up again. Or it's Lewis, isn't it?
I don't know.
RJ, I think it's RJ Lewis, even though it's spelled like Louise. 11 points a game last year. I expect him to take a little jump in the system this year if he's healthy. They're looking at Simeon Wilcher, who played limited minutes last year. He might be a guy who kind of winds up cracking the starting lineup. I could see that happening. He probably needs to shoot well from three this year for this team to have that kind of dynamic because Davon Smith shot 41% on 70 attempts. Kadari Richmond shot 27% on 70 attempts. Like this is not a team that's going to shoot a lot of threes, not a team that's going to make a lot of threes. Scott can a little bit. They probably need one more guy who can. I don't see Brady Dunlap cracking the rotation enough to be a guy who can do that. So it probably has to be Wilcher.
No. And I'll say, I guess, I don't know what you think of this, but since it is a Creighton focused podcast, like I think this team is a bad matchup for Creighton.
Oh, I have us losing both games to them this year.
I think this is like the exact archetype of team you do not want to face of like big defensive, big down low, switchability on the wings, athletic as all hell, and like trying to get in the lane. They will shoot those mid-range jumpers. Like I think, and you saw it a little bit last year. Like I think this is a team that's like pretty tailor-made to beat Creighton.
And it'll be different because I mean, Richmond, I don't know if he has a win against us before this. Um, oh, that's not true. That's actually not true. I think the one year he might have beat us twice. Last year, anyways, he didn't look real good against us. He struggled against the drop coverage, even though he is kind of a mid-range guy. He shot that Seton Hall team out of some games last year. So this is one of those moments I kind of want to stop and say, like, I don't think Kadari Richmond is that great of a player. I think some of the national PR he's getting has been ridiculous. This is just more of a situation where I like the team around him more. I like the team fitting with Patino more, and it has, I think, more to do to that with that than him being, a potential All-American or anything like that.
Sure. Yeah, that's fair.
All right. So, I mean, anything else on St. John's? I think this is another team where you know what you're getting. The range of outcomes might be a little wider, just because they do have so many questions with shooting. But yeah, this team is not going to be fun for anybody to play against.
No. I know, like, again, I know I'm a big Patino guy. Like, I'm aware this team missed the tournament last year. Like, they ranked 21st in Ken Palm. Like, by all accounts, this is a really damn good team. Um, so I would be very, very surprised if this team did not make the tournament.
Yep. Yep, me too.
And
All right.
I'd be surprised if they weren't a top 8 seed.
Yes. Yeah. So we'll do, I mean, us quickly. I think we spoke about it enough in last week's episode, but the question I guess that would be relevant for this one is how do you see us stacking up against that second tier of teams? What do those games look like for us? What has to happen for us to emerge as kind of the best of the rest?
Yeah, so I have us 4. I know we touched it earlier. I think we have like one of the lowest range of outcomes in the country. Like floor, like I think the ceiling is, I don't know, 15. I think the floor is 28. Um, I don't see us falling outside of that. Maybe I don't know if you want to go ceiling a touch higher or whatever. You have to have somebody step up. Like Fedor has to be eligible and be promised as what he was. Isaacs has to be healthy and keep the counting stats pretty close to similar while seeing at least a moderate uptick in efficiency. Like I think 105, 106 O rating is kind of like the floor for him of like where you're going to need him to be, assuming he gets to those same numbers. You cannot have an injury to Kalkbrenner. I know I said that we have a narrow range of outcomes. If he is hurt, I think that goes completely out the window. Like I think if for some reason he, God forbid, gets hurt night one in a bye game, I don't think it's a tournament team. Like I think he matters that much. Not only himself, but schematically in the sense of he is everything we do. He's how we construct our entire defense. I think it's going to be like last year. They're going to struggle kind of with elite defensive teams like St. John's. Yeah, I don't know. I see us between a 4 and a 7 seed. In the NCAA tournament, and
Yeah.
anything else that would really surprise me.
Yeah, none of that is unfair. I think you've got a ceiling, right, with this team. And I'll be honest, like I have two different rankings for this team. I have the with Zugic and the without Zugic, because it sounds like it's like pure rumor at this point, but I have heard things aren't going great with his eligibility conversations. So I don't know. I think he existing as a player on this team is a massive deal. Isaacs gives you a bit of a higher ceiling if he is the player that his profile says he is, rather than the percentages he shot last year. I don't love Neil as a starting player on a top 25 team, but sometimes it's okay to have one of those guys. But having one of those guys counts on somebody emerging from the four as a solid or better starter. And again, as we talked about last episode, I think the most likely guy for that is Green, especially with Miller not having a full off season. But for me, it really is. If Zugic is eligible and is the player that I think he is, I'm very high on what he could bring to this team.
Sure, I would agree.
All right, so we'll do, I mean, with UConn, there's not a whole lot to really talk about because you kind of know what you're getting at this point. There is a little bit of a separation. Torvik has them 13th, KenPom has them 5th. I'm sure both have resulted in bitchy tweets from every corner of
They
their
already won at
families
Evan
and
Mia.
administration. Yeah, Diarra will be running the show at the point this year. The two guard in their exhibition was Solo Ball, Solomon Ball. I think that's probably going to be the way they'll start the year. Mahaney from St. Mary's will be in contention for that role. McNeely seems to have a good hold on their 3 spot. Liam McNeely, top 10 freshman. Caravan playing the 4. Samson Johnson and Terrace Reed from Michigan are splitting the 5. It is not as good of a roster as last year, and I'm just not sure that that matters.
I remember saying this exact same thing last year, and yeah, it did not matter. Um, I don't know. Again, not picking them fifth again. They're for whatever I had them. Yeah, it's worse. Like losing Tristan Newton matters a ton. Like he was second in KenPom Player of the Year rankings, a 120 rating. Like that's you're not replacing that. Um, I mean Mahaney. I know you love Mahaney. Like Mahaney wasn't great last year. Like it is not. I don't want to call him like a disappointment. Like he was a disappointment last year. Like a
Yeah, he
modest.
wasn't, he didn't take as big of a step from his freshman year as you would have hoped if you're a St. Mary's fan.
No. I don't know. McNeely again. As I said for Creighton, and I'll be consistent here. And McNeely's a different caliber of player than like a McAndrew, but I am not counting on any freshman sans Flag and Edgecombe to come in this year and be a huge monster contributor right away. Like he he could be great by all means. Like he could be a average player. Like you can't, and I don't want to, I don't want to take away from Hurley. And it's kind of the same point I made with Kalkbrenner last year, where like it's lucky how good Kalkbrenner's been. Like, and I don't mean that in a negative sense at all, but like it absolutely is a significant amount of luck to get like Stefan Casso, who comes in and playing over half the minutes as a true freshman, puts up a 117 rating. Like there's no freshman, like you can't count on Cooper Flag coming in this year and doing that. Like there is a bit of luck in that. And again, Hurley and his staff, and I'll say his staff again, deserve credit for that. But you can't just like say like, oh, McNeil, like Castle was great last year, like McNeil is going to do that. Like it doesn't necessarily work like that. And I think that's important to consider and remember.
No, I mean I think that's exactly right. And it's one of those things where it's borderline frustrating because back to back, you can't really call it luck, but the amount of things that went right for that team to be as good as it was last year after the year before, the amount of things that would have to go right for this year's team to be anywhere close to where that team was last year. Like again, I'm not, it's same as you said earlier. I'm not going to be wrong on them that way by saying that they won't be the same at least tier of team that they were last year, but the roster isn't as good.
No, no. And again, like your sidebar, like little, I guess kind of on topic, but like I do think they have the best staff in the country. Like I
Yeah.
still like I think Hurley's probably better than I thought he was. Like I still don't think he's that great. And like how any school close to that range or not, like how number one call isn't Luke Murray and how number two call isn't Kamani Young, like blows my fucking mind. Like if you're hiring a coach, like how
Well, what I
those aren't
think it
calls one and two, and then 3 and 4 if they both turn you down going back through them. Like,
I would imagine it has to have been by now, and I think they're just turning it down because I can't imagine a situation where people aren't doing that.
no, I would think so, but like I'm saying, like if I'm, and I think Kentucky settled on a decent coach in Mark Pope, like, and they never would have done it. Like, I don't think Luke Murray would have been a bad hire for Kentucky if they went that way. Like, I don't think they did. Um, and like maybe that's taking it a step too far. Um, but like I don't think for
A
almost
program
any
like
that might be one of the
Kentucky,
three jobs. Like if Louisville hired Luke Murray, I think
I
that's a
was
home run.
I was literally just gonna say a program like Kentucky won't hire him because they're Kentucky. But any other program of that caliber, I don't think would have been crazy to do it at all.
No, it's like how I mean Hurley, if nothing else, deserves credit for keeping them there because like you said, I'm sure I'm not coming with some revolutionary piece of knowledge. Like, hey, have you thought of hiring one of the top two assistants on the back-to-back national champions? Like you said, I'm sure people have called and they've obviously turned them down. And I think Hurley deserves credit for keeping that up. But like, and we won't see it this year. Like I do want to see how he performs when he does lose one or both of those guys. But last time I checked, they're both still there. So I'm gonna have this team number one in the Big East. And I feel confident in that. I'll put them top five. I won't have them number one in the country, which who knows, maybe that'll look dumb. But yeah, I don't really know how you can pick against this team with the way it's been going.
No, and I mean, like because I think that's an entirely fair way to look at it, and none of them will understand, and that it's fine. Like whatever, you win back to back, you get to like I'm gonna. I did it last year where I didn't necessarily think they were the best team in the country, but I put them number one in the Big East and number one in our national preview because I'm like, if a team wins and I think they returned a pretty good roster, I tend to just, I'll give you the number one spot. Somebody's got to take it off you first. I did do that this year or didn't do that? Hold on, let me preview our national one and see what I did. Okay, I did do that again, but I this is not a team I'm expecting to be number one when the season ends. Um, the five spot is a question mark. Like, don't get me wrong, Terrace Reed is like the perfect kind of guy that they want to get in there and they need to get their hooks in and develop him. I don't think that'll happen right away. Samson Johnson is a good like backup five on a really good team. I don't know that he's a great like starting option or going to be a great player there. Yeah, McNeely is a pretty big question mark still. I like Mahaney, but like you said, it's not like he was the greatest player in the world last year.
Mahaney was 38.6% from the field last year. And like,
Yeah,
I'm sure teams are giving like that wasn't a like St. Mary's had the conference player of the year around him. Like again, I know like he probably is priority number one. Like he didn't have nothing there and he wasn't going up against like lights out like Pepperdine isn't a oh fuck, he's got to play Pepperdine tonight. How's he gonna score on them?
yeah.
Like there's a chance he's not great.
There is, and I think
There's a
there's
chance he puts up a 115-0 rating in his first team all conference, and given how things have gone, that's probably what happens. But
yeah. I mean, he scored 17 points in their off the bench in their opener. Like it's just going to be a guy. He's going to get a lot of open shots because of the system that they play and the gravity that some of these guys will attract driving to the hoop. And they've got if their lineup ends up being Mahaney, McNeely, and Caravan, I mean, those are three guys that easily could be 40% from deep. And you got to respect each one of them in theory. Obviously, that counts on McNeely developing early as a freshman, but there's a world where Diarra is not a great scorer. He's a defense first player and a decent passer. Solomon Ball, like yes, I do absolutely think he'll take a pretty significant sophomore leap, but he scored 3 points a game last year. Like
Mhm.
it's not like he's a great returning piece where it's a ready-made player. No, you're counting on development there. And I think it will have happened, and I think he will get there, but it's not a guarantee. McNeely, like again, there are two. You said it. There are two freshmen I'm absolutely confident in this year. Everything else is a crapshoot. Even if he's number three, that's not a guarantee of anything. Caravan is a great player. I think he's one of the most underrated players in the country, but he is a great role player. He's not a
I was gonna
star.
say he's a great player. I don't think he's a one.
No,
Like
no.
so,
His
yeah, I don't
offense,
know.
his offense gets created to him, and he is an excellent executor. He is not a star. And I don't
No,
even think that's an insult to say. If anything, I think it gives him more credit for being able to do what he does, but that's not the point. Jalen
no, and he's a
Stewart
plus
and
defender, he's a rebounder,
yeah,
like does everything right.
yeah, Jalen Stewart and Ahmad Noel off the bench provide some interesting depth because they're both like, again, development. At this point, you just trust that their staff will develop these guys. But combined, you're talking about a freshman and a guy who had 2 points a game last year.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's absolutely fair to have big questions about this team. It's also absolutely fair to just say, they did it last year, they'll do it again. And I don't necessarily mean win the national title, but I mean have a dominant first place in the Big East team that at the very least is a contender for the national championship.
It's kind of funny how, if you think about it, like UConn in the past decade has two of the most like trend breaking title teams where like their 14 team or what is it, 13? Is that when they won their second one? Um, where like, every stat when they're like, it wasn't 13. What year was that? Was that 12?
Oh shit.
Whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
I swear it was 13. It was 14. Was it 15? No, it wasn't 15 for sure. It was 14. Um, yeah, like like every stat's always like, oh, every champion has had this, this, and this, except for one, and that one is always 2014 UConn.
Yeah.
And now last year, it's all the cliches like, oh, every team has one game in the tournament where it's kind of close, and like, oh, you can't just lose a whole starting lineup and have them go pro and just you can't just put two freshmen in there and immediately they're going to be great. And like they completely buck that trend in the other way. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, just you put them number one and no one's gonna call you dumb if you're wrong any other way.
Yeah, like there's a scenario where they don't, I think, have a single top 10. Well, Caravan is a top 10, where they have one top 10 player in the conference. And then there's probably another scenario where you could say they have five of them.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, we've said it once, we've said it 1,000 times, we'll say it 1,000 more. Like we're not going to get beat by picking this team to be any less than the best team in the conference.
Yep. And I think that's that. So say I guess go so you have anything else or I
Nope,
think we
nope. That's
kind
yep.
of just all right. So you wanna go through your 11 in order and I'll do mine after?
Yep. So you kind of previewed. I think we've both previewed most of ours. I've got UConn number one. I don't know. I said 16-4 for them this year. I think they could lose more games than that, but again, I'm not going to count on it. I have a with Fedor Zugic Creighton at 2. I have a Fedor Zugic list Creighton at number 4. St. John's 3, Xavier 4. I have them coming in, the same record or one game apart from us. Marquette at 5. Providence at 6, taking a slight step back there. Nova at 7, taking another slight step back. Butler at 8, taking a bigger step back. And then I ended up going Seton Hall, Georgetown, DePaul, 9, 10, 11. But I think the margins there are going to be thinner than most people expect. If any of those teams gets more than 6 wins, I would be surprised.
Okay. Yeah, so I have UConn 1, I have Xavier 2. Again, I love this Xavier team. I love Sean Miller. I have St. John's 3, I have Creighton 4, I have Marquette 5. To be clear, I think it's Xavier, St. John's, Creighton, Marquette are in tier 2. Tier 3, I have Nova, Providence, Butler, Seton Hall. I do disagree with you. I think Seton Hall is closer to that crop of teams than the bottom two. You want to do a bet? I'll take Seton Hall over 5.5 wins.
Oh, yeah, I'd do it at 6.5.
Make six a push. Six is a push.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Okay. There, deal. Yeah, there you go.
That's
$1,000.
probably a bad bet for me, but that's fine.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, so I think Seton Hall's close to those, and then I have Georgetown DePaul in that order.
Okay. Yep.
And yeah, Georgetown DePaul tier 4. Um, so yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I would be kind of surprised to see any team break outside of those tiers, but who knows?
Yeah, I would even maybe give Hall a tier of their own. I would at the very least say that Hall will finish closer to Georgetown than Nova, because I also see a world where Butler isn't that great and finishes somewhere in the 6-7 win territory. Um,
Yeah.
But we'll see. Yeah, I think the tiers, like you said, are pretty. They speak for themselves at some point. I think most people would come up with something roughly similar. You're really only talking play amongst those spots. Like I don't see too many people having Nova in the top four. Like I think you really have to stretch to do that. I don't really see anyone having Marquette, Xavier, St. John's, Creighton below a 6, you know.
Yeah.
So, all right. Do you have first team all conference?
Not really.
Okay. Do you want to?
I mean, like I'm sure I'd forget someone like Kalkbrenner, Dixon, Cam Jones, Caravan, and let's go let's go Ryan Conwell.
All right. You have one more spot though, because remember they do the stupid 6 team first team where the
You
player of
didn't
the
ask
year
me
is.
if I wanted the player of the year. Yeah, let's go Cam Jones, player of the year. Um, yeah, I'll stick with Conwell on there. I threw Dixon, right?
Yep.
Let's get somebody from St. John's. I don't know. Let's go Smith from St. John's, David Smith. Let's just do that and call it good.
Yeah, I had Kalk player of the year. I don't know, maybe they finally give him some flowers for that this year. Cam Jones, Dixon, Caravan, Freemantle, and then I'm guessing they're going to put Richmond on there just because he'll probably score 16 points a game.
Hold on, take a. I can't. Take whoever Smith off and put Mahaney on. There's no way UConn's only getting one person.
Yeah, that's probably fair. I had like I did a second team. I had Telfort, Smith. I gave Pop second team. I could see that happening.
Sure.
McKnight and Hopkins.
Sure. Yeah, fine.
So defensive player of the year. I assume we're both picking Kalk.
I'll pick him. I don't like the voter fatigue thing is like, are they gonna give him 4 in a row? Like,
I think it's almost less likely to be voter fatigue now than it was the year before.
yeah, that's true.
Because at this point, it's
Um,
just like it's something I feel like everyone's just penciling in right now.
yeah, yeah, put him defensive player of the year. I like I won't pick him, but like in a Kalkbrennerless and again in that dark gray world, like where Kalkbrenner gets hurt night one, like I think Vince is gonna be a fucking monster.
I don't
Like
know if he'll play enough minutes to
he
be in
probably
the
won't, but like
consideration.
he probably won't. Yeah, and I don't think he'll win the award. I just want to give him that call out. Like I could see his what is it? It's per 40 in college, right? Yeah, per
Yeah.
40 or whatever per minute stat you want to use. Like I could see those being pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, no, I agree. The Kalk thing, his competition is what, Diarra and Mitchell this year, probably.
Probably, yeah.
And both of them are taking on a much more significant offensive load now, and that seems to usually translate to a little bit weaker defensive. No, we'll see.
Mhm.
I can't imagine a situation where unless he gets hurt, he won't have the same acclaim.
Yeah, yeah, probably.
Freshman of the year.
I don't know. Stick with McNeely.
Yep, I did too. Sixth man.
Whoever UConn's sixth man is.
Yep, I put Ball slash Mahaney, whichever one doesn't start. Uh,
Sure.
newcomer, so transfer.
I guess I'll go Conwell.
Okay, I went Davon Smith. Uh,
Sure.
coach of the year.
Dumb question. Does Richmond count?
No, because they do specify newcomer of the year to the conference.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, coach. I Hurley.
I will say, I mean, like, are they going to give it to Hurley if he does it again? Like,
Uh, I
I don't know
think
enough for
if
like
everything
how it
else,
works. Like,
because I don't see anybody making like a big jump from their preseason, right? Like St. John's might go from like 4 to 2.
yeah, fuck it. I'll just say Miller. I'll say Xavier is that good that they're like a
I
top.
think if Xavier finishes second, they would probably give it to Miller.
I'll do that.
Sportsmanship award, Stephen Ashworth going for the repeat,
Yeah, sure.
and then most improved player.
I don't care.
Yeah, I did. Who did I even pick? I picked Ejiofor if he ends up starting for St. John's.
Did they give that to Vince?
I don't know.
All right, well, he's going to be so improved that they do regardless.
All right, so last thing before we close out, just a little, this team is successful if versus is unsuccessful if. So we'll go from the bottom up. DePaul is successful if.
The other 10 teams have a We Are Marshall situation.
I put if Blocker learns how to pass and is actually a dynamic point guard for that offense. DePaul is unsuccessful if.
The other 10 teams don't have a We Are Marshall situation.
I put if they can't figure out how to guard bigs. So for Seton Hall, I had Seton Hall is successful if 3 or 4 guys hit 90th percentile outcomes.
I'll say if they can score more than 65 points in 2/3 of their games.
Seton Hall is unsuccessful if the status quo on their transfers.
Yeah, I mean, like I don't know how to like put in a sentence, but if no one takes the offensive leap that somebody inevitably has to.
Yeah. Georgetown is successful if.
See DePaul answers.
I put if Burks breaks out and they find a third star. Georgetown is
Decide to play defense. Like I'm sure I'll make that mine. Like they show any interest in playing defense this year.
Georgetown is unsuccessful if they spend half the season figuring out who they should play.
Yeah, the Marshall answer.
Butler is successful if.
Guys hit their ceiling and they stay healthy.
Yeah, I put serious production from the bench. Butler is unsuccessful if they can't figure out a point guard center combo that works.
That and they don't stay healthy. I mean, they've been hit by injuries hard. Like as dumb as it is, like I think a ton of that team especially just comes down to health.
Yeah. Villanova is successful if.
Jay Wright comes out of retirement.
They find playable wings. They really do not have anything there right now that gets me excited. Villanova is unsuccessful.
Or are you not calling him a wing?
I wouldn't call him a wing.
Okay.
Well, two guard, wing guard, playable 3/4s. Villanova is unsuccessful if Dixon is the only real threat.
I mean, I was gonna say if Poplar and Dixon are the only threats and Kyle Neptune's their coach.
Yeah. Providence College is successful if.
Kim English is as good a coach as Providence Twitter thinks he is.
If Kim can actually coach this team. All right. PC is unsuccessful if Hopkins is the only workhorse.
Kim English is as good of coach as he's been his entire career.
Xavier is successful if.
Ryan Conwell translates.
Yeah, a transfer guard hits was mine. Xavier is unsuccessful if their big play struggles.
I was gonna say Conwell does not translate and or they get injured again.
St. John's is successful if.
They score 70 a game.
I have if Wilcher becomes a threat. St. John's is unsuccessful if Richmond doesn't share the ball.
If they have no outside shooting at all.
Marquette is successful if.
1, 2, 3, whatever number you want to say of the unproven freshmen / sophomores take the leap they're clearly expecting them to.
Yeah, mine was a freshman is a significant contributor. Marquette is unsuccessful if the role players don't evolve.
So if Stevie Mitchell and Ben Gold do not become what they think they are.
Yep. Creighton is successful if.
Fedor's eligible and Kalkbrenner stays healthy.
Yeah, mine is, I literally just wrote Fedor. Is unsuccessful if no jump for Ashworth.
One of those two things don't happen and one of the question marks, or none of the question marks step up.
Yep. UConn is successful if the bus doesn't crash.
Kamani Young and Luke Murray don't take a last minute job at Holy Cross.
UConn is unsuccessful if Reed and Sampson both bust.
Those two take a last minute job at Holy Cross.
All right. Well, I think that will do it unless you
But
have...
Rushmore.
Anything? Oh, all right. So if you've managed to stick around this long, you'll be handsomely rewarded.
We'll clip it.
Yeah, we'll clip this one for sure for our Twitter folks. Um, I don't. Well, I remember exactly what caused this, and I referenced it
What
earlier.
did cause it? Was it Kadari Richmond?
It was Richmond. Yeah, it was. I've tweeted 3 or 4 times now that Kadari Richmond must have the best PR guy on planet Earth. That everyone keeps bringing him up as like the best transfer of the cycle, All American for sure this year. Forgetting that I think he was what like 30% from the field last year. I'm sure I'm exaggerating, but he's
Every time
not.
I bring it up, he gets 1% worse. You're gonna see the inverse for my number one pick. Should I get him? But
Well, so you know what? I'll offer it up to you. So we're doing Mount Rushmore best PR guys. Like who has the best PR? What has the best PR? So do you want picks 1 and 4 or 2 and 3?
I'm worried. I want 2 and 3, but I'm worried. Like I need to get my top two, and if I can get my top two at 2 and 3, for those of you who don't know, this is actually a novel concept we invented. It's going to be a Mount Rushmore, so we're going to draft the
Nobody's
top.
ever done this before.
Yeah, we're actually the first podcast and sports show to ever do such a thing. So yeah, this is the Mount Rushmore best PR guys. We'll clip this and put a Twitter poll up. I'll take one just because I've been on this hill for so long.
Okay, go ahead.
Can we take it away? Number one, Kobe Bryant. Every every year, again, people forget, like, just probably did rape someone. Like, that's he's admitted he had non-consensual sex. That doesn't matter. Every year since he's dead, he gets one spot higher on the all-time list. Like, he was maybe the best player in the league, like at that time for like what, a year, like 2 years. Like, he very rarely was like the best player in the NBA, like in his time. And like now you like there are people like every year since he's died, it's like, oh, is he better than LeBron? Like, he was never better than LeBron. Like, knock that shit off. Kobe Bryant, number one.
It's a good 1-1. Michael Vick is number 2. The guy's back on TV. Like,
Yeah,
can you believe that?
that's a good pick.
Like, imagine telling like 7-year-old yourself, like, hey, that guy that everybody makes fun of because he like fought and beat the shit out of dogs, like, oh yeah, he's just gonna be on national TV as like a weekly Fox NFL contributor.
Quick side note of that. I might have told you this story before, but I'll never remember this. This is not like I'm not friends with like the smartest people in general. Like I have some dumbass friends, and this guy's like not even in my bottom four. But I never remember sitting a spring league baseball game, and he's like, I never got the point of dogfighting. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, I don't get it. And I was like, well, you bet on it. Like he's like, so like they bet on like who's gonna win. And I was like, yeah, like you like bring like you have your dog or whatever, and like people take bets and like you breed them for fighting. And he's like, goes, well, why would anyone ever bet on the dog? And for like 10 seconds, it took me 10 seconds to realize like, you fucking think like he was fighting the dog? Like it was Michael Vick versus this pit bull? Was it not? It's like, no, it was not. It was a pit bull versus another pit bull. Like you think Michael Vick was like fighting a dog. And like that was, I think, senior year of high school. Like it was too old for that question to be asked. But yeah, anyway, good pick.
Wow. All right. I'm not sure which of these next guys to go with because it's very much the same boat. So I'm gonna go with Snoop Dogg.
Okay.
He is on everything. He is the face of NBC. He's on like Sunday Night Football. He's on the Olympics. The dude, he killed a guy.
Yeah.
Does everyone forget that? Like he killed a guy.
Yeah, it's a good pick. My next one, very happy this fell to me. Kendrick Perkins.
Okay. Yep.
Like, why is he on everything? Like, he's a fucking idiot. He was not a good player. Like, of all the like NBA role players in the course of history who've averaged like 5 and 2, why is this one? And I want to clarify, of all the idiot NBA role players who've averaged 5 and 2, like, why is this one on every single show now? Like, he's not entertaining. He doesn't know anything. He wasn't good. I don't get it. Like,
See if all right. Can I make a criticism?
sure,
I would consider this the difference between having a good agent and good PR people because I think most people fucking hate him.
sure, that's fair. Yeah.
Like I don't think his image is good, but I think his agent has done a phenomenal job getting him these jobs somehow.
Okay. Yeah, sure. That's fair. Whatever. Don't like Kendrick Perkins. I'll do. Well, then shit. No, I don't know what's PR and what's agent. I'll do PR. Mark Wahlberg,
Yep, he's on.
the hate crime. What's no one really brings that up.
No, not as often as you would think they would have to.
All right. Yeah, I don't have a ton to add there, but yeah, committed a hate
Yeah, the hate
crime.
crime. Yeah.
You could just like, and this isn't necessarily bad, but like, didn't you say like if I was on the planes on 9/11, I would have stopped it?
Oh, that sounds familiar.
Can't prove you want to, so uncertain.
Yep, nope, that's definitely a good one. Definitely on my list. So in the same vein as my previous one, I'll go with Ray Lewis next.
That's good. I thought of him when you said Michael Vick.
Yeah. So
Vick.
gone in a similar vein, those two. And I got some long list ones, but then just for the purpose of, it's my gimmick, I gotta do it. My last pick. I'll go with Kadari Richmond.
Okay, sure. Um, yeah, good pick. I have two. Do I want to stick in the Big East and go Kim English because I don't think he's a good coach, or do I want to go the 2023 Alabama Crimson Tide football team? Um, you know what? I think I'm gonna go with the 2023 Alabama Crimson Tide football team. The PR that was done like starting weeks in advance to get them in over Florida State. The fact that like the gambling markets changed from Florida State being like a 3-1 favorite to get in after that game ended to like a 2-1 underdog to not the morning of. Like the PR machine that ran that night, incredible. Um, yeah, I'll make that my fourth round pick.
Yep. No, that's a good one. It was a good draft. Some of my
Mhm.
long listed one. I mean, Tom Cruise is an obvious one.
Sure.
He's gotta know a lot of shit. Bill Clinton, we talked about that one last
Have
night.
him on the list.
Wild Bill. He just made some very weird comment at a funeral the other day too. That guy's always up to something.
All right.
I had coconut water on my long list.
So
Somehow people have been managed to convince that is worth a damn.
it's a good one. Uh,
Nike Elite socks.
that's a good one. Good one. That would have been a good one, just like or like travel baseball accessories. Like
Oh yeah,
every kid needs a slide. Like
those
I've
stupid
I'm fucking
necklaces.
little league games where they put a sliding mitt on and the rules prohibit you from sliding head first.
Oh, that's
Um,
good.
I had Kim English, I had Buzz Williams, parentheses. Um, I had I had Haley Welch, but that might be agent, kind of like you were saying.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I had Morgan Wallen. He's done a couple questionable things that have kind of
He
just
has. That's a
rolled
good
off the
one.
back. Yeah,
That's a good one.
yeah.
I had Marcus Rashford. Shout out my Premier League followers.
I don't know.
I mean, you could do the cheap one and go like Angel Reese because that's
I thought about that. I
absurd.
thought about that.
Jeremy Renner would have been a good one too. Like in the not quite the same. He's in more of the domestic abuse category.
Blocker charge, Jeremy Renner versus Snowplow.
It's good.
There's a bunch I hate, Rex. Have you ever seen that show?
That
There's a bunch
one
I hate Rex
specifically, I
chat.
think
Like,
we've
that's a
talked about
funny
before.
show.
Uh, I had Zendaya on there too because I really don't know how she suddenly became in everything.
Former Shake It Up star.
Yeah, that's what I would have remembered her. That was a little after my time. You're the 2 years that you are younger than me really makes the difference on that one.
Yeah, I didn't watch it a ton. Like that wouldn't be in my top 10 shows to go back and rewatch, but
No,
I
there's
dabbled.
some good stuff to work with there. I don't think that makes the cut.
All right, well, yeah, I think that's most of it.
Yeah, I think that 10-minute segment might be a little hard to clip, but we'll see what we can do.
Yeah, we've done longer than 10-second clips.
Well, I mean, like Twitter only allows you to have, I think, 2.5 minutes.
Well, might be a two-parter.
Yeah.
Oh,
All right. Well,
have to listen to the whole damn thing on YouTube.
that was our Big East preview and other stuff. We'll try to do the national one at some point. The national one, I think that got 6 views last year, so I'm sure you guys are all very excited about that.
I like a good national pod. Hopefully I didn't put anyone to sleep today with some energy.
I like the national one too. I'm actually really excited for. I did way too much research for it, but that's just because I gotta at least pretend like I know ball a little bit.
Yeah, be a ball number. Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited it'll be a good year. I'll need it for a palate cleanse, dude. My fucking basketball team, we will not. I'm coaching eighth grade basketball for anyone who's somehow still here. and we have yet through 3 practices. We have yet to have a full court, but I don't think we've ever. I don't think we have yet to score off not an offensive rebound yet. Like our first look, I think we're about 0 for 20 with 18 turnovers.
Yeah, eighth grade kids and shooting is not always a happy occasion.
If you put a gun to my head and said pick a kid to make a three, I'd say shoot me.
That bad, huh?
Dude, it's so bad. Like if we're gonna be like a Jay Billis quick two, where like we're down 3 with 5 seconds left, get to the rim. Like we're not fucking making a three.
Well, we're both advocates of Samson Ball. Just have him pressing high, get a bunch of layups.
Yeah, that would work, except we can't shoot layups either.
Ah,
So but yeah, no, that's what I said we're gonna be Texas A&M, who I did I was literally talking about them with our assistant coach yesterday. There's a preview to the national pod. One of the most insane things I've ever seen to be 341st in effective field goal percentage and have the 26th rated offense.
that's wild.
Yeah, right? 342nd in 3-point percentage, 301st in or 311th in 2-point percentage, 247th in free throw percentage, 357th in block percentage, and you're the 26th rated offense.
Gee, like imagine if they ever like hit threes in a game, they could really bury a team. I hope that didn't happen to anybody.
Yeah, I got it now. That was the second comment. I got it. Yeah, well, we'll be back for more soon, I'm sure.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Dennis.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Till next time.